Good afternoon. Good afternoon. How is everyone? It's time to get started. Mr. Coley, could you please call the roll, please?
Be my pleasure. Commissioner Feinbaum.
Here.
Commissioner Gibson. Commissioner Hamilton. Commissioner Herbert. Commissioner Simpson Brown.
Here.
Commissioner Small.
Present and accounted for.
And I understand Commissioner Caballero will not be here today.
Yes, thank you. We've all had an opportunity to review last month's meetings. Can I have a motion for approval?
Motion to approve.
Second.
Thank you. Do I need to call the vote? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? At this time, I'd like to recognize Gabe to bring us some official action.
Thank you, Chair. Commissioners, I'd like to recognize Mark Walker, our Senior Vice President and Chief Financial Officer, to give you an update on the last agreement with TVA on the solar program involving the Green Invest program. Mark?
Commissioners, you may recall last year, late 2022, we brought several amendments to our previously executed contracts under TVA's Green Invest program for your consideration. We did acknowledge at that time there would be one remaining amendment. We expected it to probably come sooner than today, but there are 4 other parties actually to this solar development project in Tullahoma. So we were able to finalize everything over the summer, and today it is submitted for your consideration. Just a brief background information on this. You may recall back in March of 2020 when we executed our long-term partnership agreement with TVA that did enable us to participate in TVA's Green Invest program, which is designed to bring new renewable sources of power generation to the valley. Over the course of that year, we actually executed a series of agreements under the Green Invest program for 4 separate solar development projects totaling 502 megawatts of new solar power to be developed over the next several years. But then the pandemic hit and other economic factors arose. And during 21 and 22, the solar industry experienced a lot of changes, supply chain constraints, inflationary pressures, new tariffs, new changes in regulations. All of that had an impact in driving up the cost of solar development and also the timing of projects as well. So in the summer of 2022, each of the developers of the 4 projects we were party to approached TVA and KUB asking for price concessions and time concessions, extended in-service dates as well. So we spent a good portion of last summer negotiating that out with TVA. And then we brought back to the board in October really a revised recommendation for our Green Invest Solar. And that included dropping one of the 4 projects, a project in far west Tennessee in Ridgely, that really had an unacceptable price increase, if you may recall. It went up, I can't even remember the percentage, it was so high. So we decided to pull out of that one, but proceed with the other 3 projects with higher prices and extended in-service dates. So last fall, you authorized the execution of 2 amendments. Both of those are for projects in Mississippi, and we did execute those agreements, and those projects are presently under construction. And we'll talk about that more here in just a moment. But the remaining project, the Tullahoma project, of which there are multiple parties to, we have 55 megawatts of a 200 megawatt project. And that's the purpose of the amendment today, because we need to amend the original contract to reflect the higher price and the extended in-service date. This table shows all 3 of the solar projects under the Green Invest program, which we are a party to. You'll note the 2 on top are both located in Mississippi and really close proximity to each other. And you can see the particulars of those. I draw your attention to the in-service date. The Golden Triangle project is due to be completed and in service by June of 2024. So a lot of work is going on that one, as well as the Optimus project. also in Mississippi, which is due to come online in the first quarter of 2025. Yes, sir.
When we dropped Ridgely over in West Tennessee, did that give us an opportunity to increase our shares other places? Because how many megawatts did we lose when we dropped Ridgely?
We dropped 177 megawatts because that whole site was for KUB.
Okay.
We did talk about opportunities to, for instance, in the Golden Triangle project, there's other parties to that, but they all held steady as far as I know. General Motors and Starkville Utilities on that particular project in response to the price increases. Now, in Tullahoma, I will say, the city of Nashville is one of the parties to that. They did drop about 60 megawatts of their original allocation. We did talk to TVA about potentially increasing our allocation, but the answer was they wanted to keep it for their own inventory. So, does that answer your question on that? Okay. And I have highlighted the Tullahoma project. Again, 55 megawatts. You can see the estimated annual output from the solar generation. The contract price is now $3.08 per megawatt hour. The original contract was $1.25, as it was for these other projects as well. And again, as we discussed last fall, we decided to move forward with this at the price increase, and the extended in-service date, which is now June of 2026. So if you look at all three projects together, the total solar generation per year is around 712,000 megawatt hours. You put three more zeros in it, and you've got kilowatt hours, which we're more used to talking about, 712 million kilowatt hours. That represents 13% of our total power supply load for a year. And if you want to see how many households that could serve, it's 54,000 households it could power for an entire year.
That's amazing.
So this is where we are right now under the Green Invest program. There may potentially be future opportunities for this, but right now I think TVA is looking to build up their own solar inventory at this point in time. And then I did want to share with you a couple of photos. This is the Golden Triangle project located in Mississippi. And these photos are a couple of months old. I've seen some more recent ones, so more construction has taken place. This is the initial clearing of the land, or a portion of the clearing of the land. That is, the actual site will be a total of 1,600 acres for this 200 megawatt project. And then the photo on the right actually shows what's called piles, and those are the foundation of where the solar panels will be laid upon. So to put it into context, you have if you think of our community solar project off I-40, that's 3 to 4 acres and 2,000 solar panels. This project is 1,600 acres and 1 million solar panels. So it'll be quite the site once it's completed, but this is the one that should be finished in June of 2024. And then Resolution 1482 does authorize the execution of the amendment to reflect the higher price and extended in-service date. And I'll be happy to answer any other questions you might have about Green Invest or our solar projects.
No questions, just a quick comment that if there are any opportunities to increase our shares in places, let's do that. I mean, this is amazing. We said 13% of our load for a year at 54,000 households.
And
that's phenomenal.
And when we were at 502 megawatts, that was 20% of our load. So yeah, losing that Ridgely project really did drop it down.
Yeah, let's keep doing that. So thank you all for that.
Is it still has it still been a challenge to find land for these kind of projects?
It is, and that's when you're looking across the Tennessee Valley. That's why these projects are located in more rural areas, of course. Mississippi is an ideal place with lots of available flat land. That's why their biggest projects tend to be located there. There are other projects, of course, Tullahoma in Middle Tennessee, West Tennessee, Western Kentucky. There's a TVA solar project under development right now, but in particular land, especially if you're looking in the more East Tennessee area, yeah, it's more of a challenge for that much land Or are you thinking 1,600 acres? Actually, the total site, because there'll be some other stuff, buildings and on the site, it's 2,000 acres and all that the developer purchased for the Golden Triangle project.
If there are no other questions, can I have a motion and a second on first and final reading for Resolution 1482?
So moved.
Are there any members of the public who would like to address the board on this particular resolution? Seeing none, Mr. Coley, will you please call the roll for the vote on Resolution 1482 on first and final reading?
Commissioner Feinbaum.
Aye.
Commissioner Gibson.
Aye.
Commissioner Hamilton.
Aye.
Commissioner Herbert.
Aye.
Commissioner Simpson Brown.
Aye.
Commissioner Small.
Aye.
Resolution 1482 passed on first and final reading.
Thank you. Now, I will recognize Gabe for his president's report.
Thank you, Chair. As you all know, 10 days ago, Knox County was hit really hard by some devastating storms. Our folks did a phenomenal job restoring that power, and I asked John Williams, our Senior Vice President of Engineering and Construction, to give you an update on that with some pictures and some details. But I will say our folks did an outstanding job working through a pretty bad event. So, John.
Yeah, thanks, Gabe. So I'm a late addition to the agenda, which is already full, so I'll do my best to cover and give this event its due, and happy to answer any questions as we go through this. August 7th storm, very remarkable, and this is just a quick snapshot of a lot of locations throughout our system and other communities as well that were devastated by that storm. So about 1 o'clock-ish, it came through our system on that Monday. High winds, confirmed tornado, caused a lot of damage to trees. We had very mature trees, very big trees falling on customer homes, property, businesses, causing extreme damage. For us, we saw at least 81 poles broken, over 66 transformers damaged, and in that process, right around 75,000 customers were impacted by an outage, which represents the third largest customer outage event from a storm in our history. And I'll have some historical comparisons toward the end, but it was a big one for sure. At its peak, about 57,000 customer outages in our call center certainly got a lot of business from 2 to 6 p.m. on that Monday from folks reporting outages, and then about 8,000 of those calls were responded by someone directly who a customer wanted to speak with someone about that. So they were very busy early on, as were our crews getting out the door. Good news was it was a Monday morning-ish or Monday afternoon. Had everybody here, had available contract resources and off-system crews that could help us. So kind of walking through this, as I mentioned, the headline is really the trees. About 83% of the outages were from trees. Most of those were from outside the trim zone that we maintain. So large mature trees falling, causing damage to our assets as well as, again, businesses, homes. We had another 10% from lightning, and so Mother Nature had her way with us that day, and then we relied on our crews to make some repairs over the next few days. And so I'll kind of walk through a little bit of that. You know, we have a great number of employees and contractors on our system, but we were able to reach out and get crews from off our system, an extension of our contractors, as well as some neighboring utilities that weren't impacted, who were able to loan us their folks for several days. And that was able to get us through the storm much, much quicker than we could on our own. A storm of this size, just to kind of put it in perspective, 75,000 customer outages, the minutes associated with that is about a year's worth, if you look at over the last 12 months. So kind of give you an idea, that's what we were dealing with. Great work, clearing trees, clearing damage from our folks, and I don't want to go through this particular slide in a great detail, but I do want to remind you that when we have a storm, we go into an incident command structure. Our organization transforms into a storm response, and I mean that literally, because we have folks that go well outside their day-to-day roles to help us in an event and take on different roles in a storm. So we've got the incident command group that includes the communication side, telling the story to customers, working through that safety, and then liaison groups working with emergency agencies. We have a customer section that stays busy through the entire event, and our operations section, planning, and planning is probably one of the larger ones in there because we've got to do a lot of work to make sure our crews are ready to go because they're the finite resource. You can only have so many of them, and so you got to make sure that they're as efficient as possible, and so we don't want them waiting on us with work, and when they get there, being able to get that work done. And then logistics, again, all around trying to support all that effort. So a lot of work that goes into that, and those rotate through multiple operational periods throughout the entire event. Kind of by the numbers, right at 1,900 repair jobs in the event. Those are unique jobs that I think in this particular event were understated. And what I mean by that is when our damage assessment crews go out, they would see a broke pole, a down line, trees here, and they would create a job around that or confirm that through our system. When our crews would get out there and begin removing debris, they'd find more than just one thing broken, oftentimes 2 or 3 things that were broken as well. So that one job turned into multiple jobs, but was really counted for once. So I think it was larger in terms of the number of events than maybe we would have thought otherwise. The right graph, just to kind of show that just a little bit, a couple things going on there, so I'll call those out. The first thing is the customer outages. So peak of 57,000. By 10 p.m., we had it down to 15,000. So cut that down about 73% within a few hours. And that's just restoring substations, large breakers, those larger events. Then if you look, and the next day, right around 2 to 4 p.m., had it down to 5,000. Next day down to 1,000, and then the work continues. So that blue line there shows just the number of events that we had on the system, that 1,905, and just show those being resolved. One thing you'll also see is 2 different color bars there. The red are the new events that came in through our system that we knew about. And as those come in, we close those out. So you see those in the gray ones that we close them out. But as you'll see, as we're closing out events, we're getting new events. So those are an outage that was a larger circle that became multiple circles, where we got one location cleared up, and then there's more beyond that. That also includes those jobs I mentioned that we found more damage. So over 625 people on the ground for the event, which enabled us to get through the event much more quickly than we would have otherwise. There are a lot of similarities when storms happen, and more similarities than differences. But every storm has its own unique story, so to speak. And in this one, I do think there was just a high concentration in certain areas. The west side of our system in whole was impacted greatly, and there was some very concentrated damage. So the bad news was we found more damage as we were fixing things. The good news is travel time was reduced, so we didn't have to move around quite as much, which was more efficient. The tornado, when that happened, was confirmed, that triggers some things we have to do on our natural gas system for public safety to make sure we inspect our facilities. So there was a small incident command team constructed on our natural gas side to make sure that our facilities were safe and everything was good. And they did a lot of work around that just off to the side, but they were working on that as well. Along the way, fiber. This was probably one of the first events we had of this scale that allowed us to work alongside our fiber resources and work through that. So there were some fiber outages. Most all of those were because of the power was out. There were a few, about 25 events that were separate from the power outage events, but it was a really good learning opportunity for us to work alongside each other on fiber and on the electric response and learn to do that on a smaller scale. So a lot of things that went well there, I think. And then a couple of other things that were process improvements that I hope paid off well. One was a lot of work's been done with our estimated restoration process over time, making sure that we're publishing those on our outage map so customers know when to expect power to be restored. Early in the storm, that does not work well. There's just so much damage. All the analytics behind that just go out the window when you have that many outage locations. But what we try to do is through the damage assessment teams that go out there, we try to use that along with our planning section and populating those jobs on crews to be able to predict what jobs we'll be able to get to in the next operational period. And from my view, I think that went really, really well, better than anticipated, I thought, through those events. For those that we didn't have estimated restoration times for, our call center initiated some proactive outbound calls to those folks, letting them know that we may not have an estimated restoration time yet, but we haven't forgot about you, or we're going to come to you soon. So I think those were things that went pretty well and were unique improvements this particular storm. The historical comparison, I mentioned it was the third largest from a customer outage perspective. When you look at a few other things, just some notable things, I'll just flip right straight to the bottom. From a cost perspective, it's going to rival the most expensive storm in our history, which is 2011. 3.7 million, and that number may climb just a little bit as we continue to refine that a little bit, and that's just a reflection of cost and inflation over time. But you look at just the number of events and a few other things, clearly it stacks up in history as one of the largest events that we've experienced overall. And I think, again, 78 hours to restore right over 3 days puts us in line and maybe even a little bit better than some of those storms have passed. So certainly those off-system crews and process improvements over time has improved in that. And then just want to end with a thank you to all of our employees for all the work they put in, the off-system resources, our neighboring utilities that are listed there, 44 contract tree crews to help us clear things out to get work done. So just a lot that went into that, as well as all their families that allowed us to borrow them for the better part of a week, and really even into the weekend, because once the last outage was completed, there was still follow-up work that had to be done. And then certainly to our customers for their patience and understanding of the complexities involved in this, and all the well wishes. And some of these are reflected there, just a lot of positive comments on social media and other places for our crews and the hard work that they put into it. And so with that, be glad to answer any questions y'all may have.
Just first of all, we've talked about this. I know I've emailed quite a few folks on the board that just to commend the entire KUB team. This was a somewhat unexpected storm. Mm-hmm. Certainly at the level that it hit Knoxville was unexpected, but you know, I think we know the team that's here and how professional they are to get the job done. But you know, I was hearing from friends who would call me or just in casual conversations and just commend KUB, not even knowing that I was on a KUB commissioner. The neighborhood Facebook groups for the neighborhoods were just so complimentary and proud of the men and women to get their power back on, even if they had to wait a day or two. Mm-hmm. Right? They were patient. So kudos to the entire KUB organization.
Thank you.
Question for you in regard to I know that the call center had some challenges. The app, I think, was down. The KUB app had some challenges. Was that due to an overload of calls? Was it due to power outage or the redundancies that failed in that regard?
The app and specifically the website, pretty complicated issue. Ultimately, the outage map stayed up, but we had a configuration that we're still trying to chase down on that front end that it was just a pure throughput issue. The storm comes through when literally, you know, everybody's at work or school and immediately want to know what's going on, and it just flooded it. And so shouldn't happen. It's been stress tested for well beyond what it got hit with, but we're taking a real deep dive to be sure that doesn't happen again, because it's unacceptable, and it shouldn't happen in that regard. So all the systems behind that, our AMI reporting, all the other outage maps, all that still stayed up, but it was just that outwardly facing front page of the website that hiccuped. Yeah.
John, I was going to say, you know, do we get hit by those supply chain issues? So, you know, we have to replace 81 poles and 66 of the other apparatuses. So talk about, do we have that in-house? Do we borrow from other utilities? Because I know that, you know, as we've talked before, supply chain has been an issue. And when you have to replace that many poles and other equipment at one time, it could really strain your resources.
Yeah, no, we have all that in stock. We've over time had some strategic conversations about what to have on site for new service, for growth, for storm response. And so we carry a little bit more on hand because of that. And honestly, with some of the supply chain, we've tried to get as much as we can of certain things, just knowing the uncertainty around that. So we were able to get all that, and we were able to take care of it in this storm. But certainly, we would rather not have to use it for that purpose if we don't have to. But we did have it on hand.
I was just going to echo the compliments to everybody here. I mean, I was fortunate enough to live in a neighborhood where after the storm, you could drive down through my neighborhood and all it looked like was that a heavy rainstorm had gone through. So I saw the photos, of course, of what happened in the area where the tornado hit. But then later that evening, I was driving by North Shore and Lions View, and I looked backwards, and I could not believe that there wasn't a second tornado that had hit there. I have never seen anything like that. It was just absolutely incredible, and you all moved very quickly, not only to repair, but to make sure that everybody was safe, and that's just, like I said, looking at what could have been through there, it was just really incredible. So kudos to everybody that jumped in and did what you did and managed the information flow and everything that you managed to accomplish so quickly, because it was just a massive amount of devastation. It was amazing.
It was. You mentioned rain, and Donna, I forgot to mention something, but on Thursday we had another storm event come through, a lot of rain. And so from a plant's perspective, they went from about 17 million gallons to 120 million gallons in about an hour. So in that time frame, there's a whole lot of rain, and so they were busy on Thursday as well. So it truly hit all parts of KUB, either on the front end or the back end. So a lot of folks working on that. But yeah, for sure, good deal.
You know, I do want to echo what my fellow commissioners said in terms of just the professionalism and the timeliness and the hard work of our staff. And I think for this board, it is, sometimes we get some heat for some of the decisions we make. But I think in times like this, I think this is where that pays off, and it shows that we are thinking, and you all are thinking, forward thinking in terms of how to protect and support and ultimately, you know, keep our community with these necessary resources as it relates to energy. So I just want to again echo what they said and just really thank the leadership of KUB, because this doesn't happen without really strong leadership, and you all made that happen. So again, you know,
Thank you.
good work.
You know, your planning skills, one of the things that has impressed me about KUB over all these years that I've been on the board is the fact that you plan for circumstances, and that planning shows in the responses that you were able to make in this situation. And so if anybody ever doubts, oh, why are we, dealing with this? This is a classic example of being able to show, we have a plan and we can get into action very quickly. And thank heavens, in some ways, that it was at the timing that it was on a Monday. It didn't happen during the night. I think the timing of that storm probably ended up saving maybe lives too, because of the fact that it was in the daytime and you all were able to respond so quickly to those down lines where someone might have touched one of those. And, the seminars that you put on, the demonstrations about don't touching those lines, obviously it's all worked. And I think that it's because you all have gotten an organization that realizes that you've got to be community driven, and you responded, and I'm impressed continually.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
One last thing. I wanted to thank Gabe as well and all the leadership for making sure that we were in the loop of what was going on. It's like I didn't have to ask any questions. So that's very appreciative, and I'm able to communicate to people who are asking me questions. So I was like, be patient, and I'm riding down the street and different places, and I see KUB and various utility trucks all over the place. So I was able to communicate, what I knew as well. So.
I would also echo the forward-thinking investment in technology. I visited the operations center right before that last big storm, And so I do think the investment in technology and they'll be able to, you know, mobilize and coordinate and communicate, really wouldn't be happening without those investments. So great forward thinking on that.
Thank you. All right.
Commissioners, we just finished up our fiscal year on June 30th, so Mark and I are going to do a little summary for you all on how the year went. I will say overall it went really well, and Mark will get you some of the details here shortly, but just kind of kick off, you know, we've done a lot this last year. When we start putting it all together, you kind of surprises me even at times. You know, we rolled out a new blueprint that just, you know, you all saw this past fall. I talk about each of those values every month with our entire company to make sure, like things like this event, where you really see your cultural shine. When you see the rest, you know, make sure we restore our customers' power and be safe. We have our first 5-year customer. It's a long process to get there, and we've got our first customers, and we're growing that great division really well. We had 2 major events. Do you remember the weekend before Christmas? Winter Storm Elliott, man, one of those I hope I never see again. And then, of course, the Boys Bridge event we talked about in June with you all about, you know, the major event there that our folks responded so well at. We launched our community solar, and Mark will give you some great news on that in a minute, but it exceeded our expectations on the take rate there, and it's been a great investment, and folks really like it. We weatherized 2,600 homes now in the Knoxville area. That's a lot of folks with a much more efficient house, which a much more comfortable house with a lower utility bill. And then finally, our systems are financially sound. Mark will give you a lot of detail on that. It's his favorite part, and so let him have that part. So with that being said, Mark, you can take it from there.
Okay, thank you. Commissioners, I'll begin with an overview of our financial performance for FY23. Also talk about how we fared against our financial metrics and organizational metrics as well. But from a financial perspective, the systems did end the year in a good position, financially sound, solid cash positions for all of our divisions. Just ticking down some of the major items. As far as earnings or net income, 4 of the 5 divisions, electric, gas, water, and wastewater, did generate positive earnings for the year. It varies by the division. Electric's going to be the highest. Wastewater is going to be the next highest. That's just typically how it works given the size of the systems. The fiber division did experience a loss that was expected for the course of the year. As we noted when we started up, those first few years we would be having operating losses. So we did have a loss in the fiber division. With respect to the budget, each division finished under their budget appropriations for the year. You may recall back in May, the board did approve additional appropriations for both the electric and gas divisions as a result of rising wholesale energy prices over the course of the year, and those additional appropriations certainly were needed to be able to fully fund all the expenditures for those 2 divisions. With respect to some components of the budget, O&M was up $12 million over budget, and we touched on this back in March when we gave a mid-year update. Inflationary pressures impacted labor, impacted contractors, impacted the cost of chemicals, cost of utilities. So a number of factors drove that. You'll see in a moment that the electric division really bore the brunt of that increase in O&M, as we also did have several major storm events that occurred during the year, not to the extent of what happened a couple of weeks ago, but still those added to the cost for the electric division. Capital in total was $75 million under budget, driven really by the timing of large multi-year projects, and then just some deferral of projects as well. But that's more of a timing issue on that. On the sales revenue side, on the margin side, you know, really sort of some good news. Water and wastewater exceeded their sales revenue budgets, which was good. Gas margin was about flat compared to budget. Electric margin was actually down about $4 million compared to budget, and that's a result of a mild June. If we went back to June of 2022, we had a really strong, it was blazing hot, and we had a good performance in June of 22 for electric, not so much for June of 23 with the milder weather that we experienced. So that did impact our electric margin. From a debt perspective, well, also just mention interest income, up $6 million over budget. Rates are beginning to rise finally on investments. So that was a boost to each of the divisions with higher interest income. From a debt perspective, we had a net addition of $47 million in outstanding long-term debt. We sold $89 million in new long-term bonds during the year, $79 million for electric, $10 million for water. But that was offset by scheduled repayments of outstanding bonds of $42 million, so a net increase of 47. And then we did maintain our high-quality bond ratings. Looking at the budget expenditure variance, just a couple, I know there's a lot of numbers on this slide, just a couple of things to point out. We talked about the wholesale energy, wholesale electric power, wholesale gas costs being well above budget. That was really the need for those additional budget appropriations. Again, you see the O&M, $12.3 million. You can see electric had the majority of that at $11.2 million over budget. Capital spread over really the four major utility divisions. Electric was $39 million under budget. About $25 million of that or so was related to the deployment of fiber services, getting a little bit later start due to supply chain issues on the fiber side. That led to a significant positive variance or underspend in capital for the electric division. So if you go down to the bottom, you can see definitely, electric was $27 million over, gas was $13 million over, but those additional budget appropriations provided the means to be able to pay those expenditures. So that's from an expenditure perspective. Looking at how did we compare on revenues? Now you would expect, because wholesale energy was up so much on electric and gas, there's a flow through of that to customers. So our revenues are up as well. Not necessarily by the same amounts. We talked about electric having a $4 million decrease in margin compared to budget. So you can see revenue was at $53 million, but power costs were at $57 million. There's your $4 million decrease in margin. Gas was roughly flat. Here you see the increases in water and wastewater. Water up about $2.5 million over budget. That's really good. That was driven by both higher residential and commercial sales than what we anticipated. Wastewater up almost $6 million over budget. And that was really driven solely by commercial industrial customer flows being more than what we had budgeted for that. And then fiber was about $9 million under in sales revenue as a result of just the delays that we experienced in the deployment of fiber services. Other revenues, you see sort of across the systems here, $1.8 million in total, but it's a little misleading. You say, well, what's going on with water with a negative $3.4 million? We had budgeted a $5 million grant for the ARPA funds for the building of the filter project. That's purely a timing issue. It just didn't come in as we expected. It will come in FY24. So don't be alarmed by that. If you kick out that $5 million that we didn't get, then that's up close to $7 million, and it's really driven by the interest income that we talked about previously. And then putting both components together from an expenditure and revenue perspective to see what the cash impact was on each of the divisions. As you can see, it was quite positive by varying amounts, and 29 million electric, 7 million gas, 14, 17, but really does tie to that capital issue with the timing and deferral of projects is why the cash position. So if you were looking how we compared to what our cash targets are, they're up quite a bit, but again, it's traced back to the capital spend. Any questions on that? Okay. Quick review of our long-term debt position at the end of the fiscal year. You can see the amount of outstanding bonds for each of the 4 utility divisions as of June 30th. In total, it's $1.1 billion. Wastewater is the highest at close to $470 million. Electric's about $370 million. And the interest cost on those outstanding bonds spread over the life of the bonds is $527 million. You can see our bond ratings, again, really where we want to have them, though we want to get that back up one of these days, and we want to get that to AAA. That's one of our missions, my missions. On the debt coverage target, the very last column to the right, that is important. That's one of our key financial indicators that we look at. And we have target levels for each of the divisions, and we did exceed those target levels for each of the divisions for FY23, which is another sign of the financial soundness and strength of the systems. Financial metrics, the board for FY23 did approve 4 financial metrics and then you can see how one for each of the divisions with the exception of no debt metrics for the fiber division. And on O&M, we've already talked about we were over budget in 4 of the 5 divisions, so we didn't meet those metrics. Cash generated from operations, electric, with lower margins than expected, much higher O&M. We certainly didn't meet our cash generated metric for that, but we did for gas, water, and wastewater. And that's a result of some savings in operating costs in those areas, and also higher sales revenues, particularly for water and wastewater, overcame the increases in O&M expenses for those respective divisions. And then we did achieve our debt-related metrics across the board. So that's financial.
So, Mark, when you talk
Yes,
about increasing our bond rating in two of the areas, this plan will, because our bond ratings directly impact interest, correct?
They do.
Right. So, interest rate. So the plan is this plan is to help, or the plan that when you talk about what's the plan, then I guess the question is, what's the plan to increase those ratings such that in the areas that you identified, such that we can get the interest rates that we need, because it saves us money ultimately.
I will say this, as far as the interest rate spread between a AA plus and a AAA rating is not going to be that great. Now, the higher interest rates go, the more the rating distinction does make a difference. As far as the plan, I think let's talk about wastewater first. I think our plan to reduce debt over time, as we've talked about, while continuing to fund our Century 2 programs in the wastewater division, the key there is that positive outlook. And often when you get a positive outlook that says, over time, if everything continues on the plan, then that will be adjusted upward. That's wastewater. Electric is what we're going to see, I think, over time, as they downgraded us, as you may recall, as a result of increased operational risk associated with fiber. And as we, over time, our fiber take rate improves, we add more customers, the electric system begins to see the benefit from that as far as the fees and charges fiber pays for that, then we anticipate that AA minus rating going back to a AA rating.
Thank you.
Organizational metrics. We had 7 that were approved by the board for FY23. We did achieve 5 of those 7 metrics. I'll point out that the 2 that we did not meet, call center performance and the fiber take rate, both finished the year on an upswing. In particular, call center performance, that I think we previously talked to the board about that one. I do have some supporting charts for several of these. I do not have one for DEI. That metric was really based on achieving several projects, carrying out several projects over the course of the year related to training, community partnerships, and also recruitment strategies. And I'm pleased to report that we really achieved and implemented all of those projects and are making progress in that regard. On environmental stewardship, we really had 2 components of that metric. One was our community solar. Our goal was to be 50% subscribed by the end of June. We were at 87% subscribed by the end of June, so we blew that out of the water. And then on homes weatherized, our metric was to do at least 250 homes for the year, and we did 450 homes for the year, so we blew that one out of the water too. So we're pleased with that, of course. So a few supporting charts. Safety performance, our goal for the year, and a serious preventable incident. A serious incident is if there's a fracture, if there's an amputation, if there's electrical shock, it's a laceration. These are obviously serious injuries that are also deemed to be preventable. We didn't have any for the year. We actually set a goal of 1 or fewer. Going forward, our goal each year is going to be 0. And that is reflected in the FY24 metrics that have already been approved, obviously, by the board. So good year for safety performance. Electric reliability. We did achieve both of our metrics related to electric reliability, both from a duration and frequency perspective. Our goal for the average electric customer was 2 hours or less without power, and we came in at 1.93, or about an hour and 54 minutes, something such as that. And the number of outage events for the average electric customer also was below the target. Target was 1.45 or less. We came in at 1.33. I will point out, as we've talked in the past, this does exclude major storm events on that. So given we had several major storm events, that number would be higher if you incorporated that. Century 2 performance, our key asset categories, our targeted replacement levels, we really achieved all of those with the exception of wastewater main, where we came in up a couple of miles short, and that was a result of a large project that we just deferred. It had a couple of miles of replacement on that, but everything else on track. So when we think back to, you achieved all those goals, but you were still over $70 million under your capital budget, that speaks to the fact that those were those large multi-year projects as opposed to the regular frequency of Century 2 work. And utility call center performance, this we talked about, we really finished on an upswing on this. We made a number of improvements, increased staffing, some process improvements. We started out the year in the low 20s, and when the audit committee actually set the goal for FY23, we knew we weren't going to achieve our 60% goal, but the idea was, let's put that out there. We have several improvements we need to make, and the goal was to show improved performance by the end of the year, which we certainly did. And I know it doesn't show on the slide, but if we had July of 23 up there, I think that was 85%. So we are showing sustained performance on that. And our goal for FY24 is 70%, so we're off to a good start on that. But that's really been a big improvement, big win for us and our customers.
Mark and Gabe, remember we talked about, and I'm not sure if it showed up moving forward, but we talked about not necessarily focusing so much on, the time that the call was answered,
Right.
but more
The
so
quality.
the quality of the interaction. And so, do we have metrics? Are we going to start to put them into metrics so that we know that we're doing a good job? Right. It's one thing to just answer the phone, but if we're not getting the person's situation addressed,
I'll defer to
then
Tiffany.
Thanks for that question, Commissioner Small. We do have metrics on that. They're not corporate level or board metrics that we share, but we've measured those metrics for a very long time. So we do call quality metrics. Generally, we're in the 95 to 98% for call quality. And we're also planning a project to get actual direct feedback from customers from a customer satisfaction. So at some point, we'll be able to bring those types of metrics forward from a customer satisfaction standpoint to the board. So yes, we are looking at all those elements because what's important to us is the quality of that call, what the interaction is like versus just how quickly the call is answered.
And as a board member, I think that information in terms of call center performance would probably be more impactful to me versus just the number of seconds in which we pick up the call.
That's a good
How do we
question. Good point.
actually measure that presently, Tiffany? Back in the 60s and 70s, my mother worked for the telephone company, and she actually observed calls. That was one of her jobs, which was, blows my mind today, but.
So not much has changed since the 70s. We do have a staff that monitors calls. So they listen to random calls for all of our associates that take customer calls, and they actually evaluate those calls.
Okay.
And so we do coaching and training if we see things that aren't going well. And then we, of course, reward and applaud those folks that are doing a good job.
You've seen this before, probably on multiple occasions, award-winning services, just a number of awards that we earned during FY23. And just, again, reflects, I think, the strong organizational performance for KUB. And that concludes my comments. I think overall, just to echo what Gabe said, a very good year from an organizational perspective, and, all our divisions remain financially sound as well.
Hi, Commissioners. I'm going to ask Susan to do two presentations. The first one is a presentation on some of the federal funding opportunities that are coming down with all the federal monies that are being doled out over the next few years. We have talked with our folks at KAP, our Community Advisory Panel, about that, and Susan will give you an update on that conversation and what we see going forward. And we also received an award just recently, so I asked her to do that while she had the floor. So, Susan, you get both presentations.
Thanks. Yes, it was earlier this year, we had a meeting of the Community Advisory Panel, and one of the CAP members actually said, you know, all this federal money is coming down the pike. We need to reach out our arms and just grab as many of those as we can for our system and for our customers. So we responded to that by having a conversation with them about some of the things that might be available and trying to find ways that we can collaborate on that. So that's what this report is about today. Before we began that conversation with the CAP, we actually retained the services of a consultant to help us really dig into those funding sources. West Monroe is a group that we've worked with before on many different engagements, and they did a really good job of providing background research and helping us to sort of prioritize the opportunities that are before us, particularly with regard to the Inflation Reduction Act, which I'll talk a bit more about in a moment. We had them actually come to the CAP meeting in May and present to the Community Advisory Panel their findings and their research, so that everybody was starting with sort of a baseline understanding, because this is not something most people have to think about much in their day-to-day lives. So we thought we'd start there and then start having an initial discussion about what next, what to do with that information. The CAP agreed that we'd come back in July and have a discussion about what we had learned. Among the CAP members in particular, there's some folks in that group that will probably be very active in this space as part of their organizations, and they wanted the chance to collaborate a little bit there and then give us some suggestions on how best to communicate these opportunities to our customers, because particularly with the IRA, there are a lot of opportunities for customers. So I'm not going to give you the full West Monroe report, but let me give you the 5-second version, which is there are really two big bills that we're talking about when we talk about this federal funding that's coming down the pike. One is the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act. That is really aimed at people like KUB. It's for building roads and bridges and pipes and wires and plants and natural gas lines. And so we're very active in that space. I'll give you a little bit of a preview of that in a moment. The Inflation Reduction Act was passed the following year, and that is really more aimed at end users, whether those are manufacturers or actual residential and commercial customers. It works primarily through tax credits, although there are some rebates as well that are intended to encourage investment in clean energy, electrification, and those sorts of things. So our engagement with the CAB was really focused on that second one, because that's where we have the ability really for customers to leverage that legislation more directly. We asked West Monroe to look at this in two ways. One is, are there any things there that can impact KUB? And there were a few. One of the big wins for public power in the IRA is that where there are opportunities for tax credits for solar installations and other clean energy things, in the past they've only been available to people who actually pay federal income tax, which of course we do not. In this legislation, they have authorized what's called a direct pay mechanism. So now we can reap the benefits directly of those clean energy tax credits through a refund, basically. And so we're in the process of looking at that for our community solar. We think it might be as much as $500,000 in investment that we could get from the federal government for that project. We're still waiting the final rules on that. So as soon as they're ready, we'll be making that application. Electric vehicle charging infrastructure is another opportunity that we might be able to leverage, and certainly down the road, if we were ever to pursue our own solar installation as part of our flexibility arrangement with TVA, that would be eligible as well. So we'll be keeping that tool in our toolkit as those opportunities arise. But as I said, the biggest opportunity here is really for customers. So there are a lot of residential energy credits, tax credits that are available right now. That's so weatherizing your home, making improvements in efficiency of the appliances in your home, switching to solar or geothermal or batteries. There's a lot of opportunities there for customers to claim those credits. Clean transportation is also available now. We've had a tax credit for electric vehicles. Now it's available for used electric vehicles. So that opens up that opportunity for more people. And we are told that as soon as next year, those will be offered at the point of sale. So it wouldn't be something that would go in on your income tax return. It would be something that your car dealer could offer to you as part of your financing package. The other big piece for residential customers is home energy rebates. Again, this is weatherization, electric conversion, those sorts of things. These monies are actually being distributed to the state energy offices. Tennessee is slated to get about $168 million in funding, and the state is now in the process of determining how they're going to dole that out, how they're going to administer those funds. We don't think we're going to know the answer to that until probably sometime next year, but we will be keeping our eye on that, and as soon as we do know, that's an opportunity for us to communicate with our customers about that availability as well. So we shared all this with the Community Advisory Panel. They, in July, had a really good conversation about what are some of their entities doing to claim some of these dollars. We learned that CAC is going to be doing a pilot project to put solar on the rooftops of some of the clients that have been weatherized through the various weatherization programs that we've helped with over the years. So this is a good opportunity to see how does that impact affordability for those families. They now have a really efficient house. If they now have solar as well, you know, what does that do for affordability? City of Knoxville has a host of grant applications. I think at the time one had been awarded, and that was for charging infrastructure for the CAT buses. So I'm sure that they will continue to be very active in this space as well. And the Southern Alliance for Clean Energy is working with partners across the state to work with THDA, the Housing Development Authority, to try and build a program for multifamily housing. That's a market that's very difficult to reach those customers, and if there are things that they can do for solar or energy efficiency, that's something that they would like to work on. So lots of work, good work going on within the group. We also talked about communication. One thing was when these programs come out, let's leverage the materials that are going to be coming from the implementing agencies. And I think there's even going to be some online resources in some cases. So we'll watch for those. But then they really suggested we build on those resources with local trusted messengers. And we've done a little bit of work in that already in that space. We actually watched a video in the meeting of a woman, you know, sitting at her kitchen table explaining in layperson terms what the tax credit for electric vehicles looks like. And so it's just really making that point to make it very approachable for our customers, which of course we would definitely agree with. Maybe look for partnerships with other agencies to distribute information. CAC has a tax preparation program for low-income customers. That'd be a great point of sale to say, hey, here are some opportunities for you to lower your tax bill next year. And then obviously we want to ensure that our website resources are kept up to date and easy to find, and we've already started that process. This is on our front page of the website right now. We have information on both the things that are currently available like tax credits and the things that will be coming like the rebates. It's on our homepage, it's on our social media, we're sharing it with our energy efficiency workshops, it'll be on our bills, and we'll continue to look for ways to help publicize that for our customers. And so that really concludes what we talked about with the Community Advisory Panel. So before I move on to that last slide, are there any questions about that? I know I'm going quickly. Okay. Since we are talking about grant applications, I wanted to just say that we are also working internally very heavy on the infrastructure side, so that other pot of money for infrastructure funds. We have a lot of opportunities there because we're right in the sweet spot of the things they're trying to accomplish, and we have a team that's been assembled to, on the KUB side, reach out and get any of those funds that we can to help our customers. So they are tracking and prioritizing opportunities. They're applying for grants. They're helping us manage compliance and reporting. So far, we've applied for over $180 million in funding. You already know about some of that, about $42 million that we've already been granted for fiber and water projects. That means there's 138 out there pending for gas projects, for additional water projects, for grid modernization. We're really focusing on things that help support things that are already in our plans that just help us offset the cost. And so we're very hopeful that we'll be successful in some of those, and we're going to keep working and keep looking because many of these come in multiple rounds. So we'll apply for anything that makes sense for us and for our customers. Any questions about where we are with grants? Okay, my last one is just one slide and very quick, but very happy news. We're members of the American Public Gas Association, which represents all of the municipally owned gas systems in the country, distribution systems. And for the second year, this year, we have won a safety contest for the large category, which is aimed at utilities with more than 70,000 hours of work in a year. So this is the second year we've received that award, and we also won a third place award for our natural gas growth communications plan. That's a communications and marketing award. So we're always happy to brag on the work that our employees do to get us this recognition. So more happy news.
Commissioners, our final presentation will be given by Janae Peterson. She's our educational outreach person for our community outreach group. As you all know, and I want to say thank you first of all for supporting teamwork. It's been one of our things that I just think makes us so special. You all have participated in that and been a big fan of that and been a big supporter of that. I want to say thank you for that. Unfortunately, the summer went by quickly as usual, and the 2023 has been wrapped up, so I asked Janae to give us an update on this summer's students and what they did. Thank you, Janae.
I do recognize the time, so I'm gonna try and move quickly through this. Oh, okay, all right. I'll start with a very, very high-level overview. I know most of you are familiar with the program, but just as a reminder, it began in 1995, specifically as a partnership with Austin East, and so we just celebrated 28 years of the program, so we're really excited about that. And the purpose of it is to educate high school students, specifically juniors, about opportunities in different career fields, and we do highlight the utility industry, of course, but we also want to provide them with some skills that will help them no matter what career field they choose to go into. And so we do that through a series of workshops. So in the spring semester, the students commit to coming to Saturday workshops at one of our KUB locations, and they're learning different things like community service is one of the topics and one of the things that we do, but resume writing, interview skills, different things that they'll need no matter what they choose to do. And the students who successfully complete the spring workshops are then given the opportunity to intern here at KUB at one of our business partners in the summer. And so we just wrapped up, less than a month ago, we wrapped up the 22-23 school year, and we're glad to report that we have over 500 students now who have successfully completed the program. And so just to recap the year, we continued the partnership that we have with Austin East, Fulton, and Central High Schools. We hosted career fairs, which we've been doing for a while, where we have KUB departments and our business partners come and talk to the students about what opportunities are available at their businesses. But one thing we added this year was college fairs as well. So we did a college fair where we highlighted a variety of different institutions to give students an idea of what their various post-secondary options are. And then we also engaged our strategic team on the long-term vision and long-term planning for teamwork, and what we want to do is we're expanding that conversation centered around the 865 Academy. So I know most of you might be familiar with it, but Knox County Schools just recently transitioned all of their high schools to an academy model so that students can choose a particular pathway that they want to pursue for their 10th, 11th, and 12th grade year. And the goal is that once they graduate, they'll have a better understanding of what they want to do, because they would have spent that time in some more focused classes with a more focused career pathway. So it's very similar to what we're doing with teamwork by exposing students to some hands-on opportunities. So we are partnering with them to see what that looks like as the years unfold and how we can assist those efforts. So here are a few pictures from some of the sessions this summer. So in the middle there, I mentioned the college fair that we did. So you'll see those 4 representatives who are from TCAT, Maryville College, Pellissippi State, and UT, because we wanted to make sure we gave a variety of options. Over there on the left is the students this summer as they were touring some of the plants, and the goal there is to make sure students get a wide array of what KUB is all about and not just be siloed in their one department that they're in for the summer. And then you have the picture there at the top right of the students at the ropes course. And so that's one of the most enjoyed activities that they do during the summer. And that's a partnership with Blount County Sheriff's Office. We take them out to Blount County, and some of their officers take them through various activities to teach them teamwork. And then down there at the bottom is just a couple of weeks ago as the students were giving their presentations to wrap up the end of the summer and talk about what they did through their internship. So here's a video I wanted to show just to give you kind of an in-depth look at what the teamwork sessions are like. This was from a session back in February that we did with Tiersa Smith. There you can see at WATE, and so we'll play this really quick.
3.
So you saw in that video, not only were they able to tour WATE that day, but both of the mayors, Mayor Jacobs and Mayor Kincannon, came and spoke with the students, not just about civic engagement and their career, but they also were willing to answer some of the questions, some of the tough questions that some of our students asked them. And then we wrapped up the day in that video. You saw us making some animal treats that we gave to Young Williams Animal Shelter for some community service opportunities. So that was just a comprehensive look at what some of the sessions look like. And so another thing that we did this year is we continued our partnerships with local businesses, specifically West Knox Utility District and First Utility District, who we are extremely grateful for. They continue to support the program and are willing to take a student. So we had students placed at both of those locations this year. And then we were really excited to onboard Covenant Health this year. For several years, lots of our students had expressed interest in the healthcare field. And although we do have the occupational health team here at KUB, it's not the same opportunity to get some hands-on patient care that you would get in a hospital setting. And so Covenant Health partnered with us this year and will continue to partner with us. And they actually took 5 students this year. So we have 5 of our girls who are interested in going into the nursing field who were able to go to Covenant Health. And I'll show you a picture there in the middle. You'll see one of our students from Austin East who's in her scrubs and all of her PPE. She was actually about to go into an open heart surgery. So she actually got to be in the operation room as they were performing the open heart surgery. And she's talked about how that solidified in her that she really does want to go into the medical field. So we were excited that she got that opportunity. And then below that, another one of our students, this is a picture she put in her end of summer presentation. One of her responsibilities every day was to take vitals of patients. So she had to go into the rooms, and it was not just teaching her how to use that machine, but she was also learning bedside manner and all of those skills necessary for successful nurses. So we were extremely excited and extremely grateful to Covenant for providing that opportunity. And then there, you also see the screenshot of the Teamwork newsletter. All of you should have that in your packets. This newsletter was created by our student who was in our community relations department this summer. She split her time with community relations and communications because she's interested in journalism and graphic design. So she actually came up with the theme. You'll see her name in there, Ella Bird. She wrote one of the articles, and so got some really great experience in journalism and what she wants to do in the future. And then Braylon there with the smile on his face, he was at West Knox Utility District, and one of the several things he got to do was actually work their window as customers were coming through and making their payments. And he talked about how he loved that because he just has the personality for it, as you can see. But he loved being able to interact with the customers. And then 2 other projects we wanted to highlight. In the middle there, our student who was in information services, he created this blog. And so you see the finished result there, but he actually had to write all of the code, the HTML language necessary for that. And so he was able to learn the systems that we use here in creating websites and apps and create his own website. And then Grace there that you see was in our lab and regulatory compliance department, and she is actually performing a water quality analysis test in this picture. So she was able to use the machines and tools needed and really get that experience that we want to provide for them. So if we look ahead to 23-24, our goals are to resume partnerships with some additional businesses that we've had students placed at in the past. We are excited to let you know that we are expanding the program. So South Doyle will now be another school that we are recruiting students from to participate in the program. We are also wanting to make sure we highlight our Teamwork alumni as program ambassadors. We have learned that the students themselves are really the champions of the program, and so they are the ones who can recruit other students and talk about their experience. And so when we're going to schools, we'll have Teamwork alumni come and be at the table so they can talk and you can hear directly from the students. And then again, the 865 Academies collaboration that I mentioned, we're continuing that partnership and seeing how we can support each other and work together as that continues to roll out. one of the things we highlight for our students is that their participation and interaction with KUB doesn't have to end when teamwork is done. And so students who perform well are invited to return to work here during their senior year of high school, but then also as they are college students as well. So one of the things we do in 2021, we created an internship where students receive a stipend to support their academic and career pursuits. And so we're excited to announce that these two students are recipients of the Teamwork Internship this year. Tylee is in overhead construction and is currently a student at Pellissippi State. And then William here, he actually is about to graduate soon from TCAT, but his major is industrial electricity, and he's actually being considered for a full-time position here at KUB. And so it's amazing to see how everything just comes full circle, and we're creating that pipeline of quality employees here. And then we also wanted to highlight Anthony, who is another student who is currently working here. He's a 21 Teamwork alumni. We asked him for a quote, and I thought it was interesting how he talks about, of course, he's in computer science and he's getting the experience by being in the ISD department, but he also says there at the end that one of the things he learned early on and was told was that ISD isn't just a job, but their job is making other people's jobs easier. And so I thought that was awesome, because not only is he getting the actual experience in his field, but he's getting to learn the culture of KUB as well and how we all work together to support each other. And so finally, I just wanted to wrap up by highlighting a few things that people are saying about the Teamwork program. Tricia Flynn over at West Knox is really the one who coordinates a lot of the logistics. And so this is what she had to say about the program. And she highlighted hard work, dependability, and teamwork. And I thought that was amazing, because those are some of the exact qualities that we're wanting our students to take away from the program. And then Noelle DeGenny there at the bottom, she is one of our alumni who everyone raves about. Everyone loves Noelle, but she is just an amazing student, and she continues to come back and work here at KUB. And she talks about how even as she is currently in college, returning as an intern gives her the hands-on experience that's directly related to her major. And so I thought that was amazing, because it just shows you the impact that teamwork is making, and gives us the push we need to keep going and to make sure other students are able to benefit from the program. So that's all I have. Are there any questions at all?
I just have a comment. I enjoy going to teamwork sessions every year, and as I have observed this over a number of years, the mentors, the people that put the programs together, Janae, you and Leslie and your teams, you all have continued to ratchet it up, and that's the reason why these students have had the experiences that they have. And I was at the kickoff to the South Knox. Fiber. Yes, fiber. I'm sitting here putting this together. It was the plug-in or whatever. But it was commented on specifically there that they were very excited that South Doyle was going to become part of the system. So I just hope other employers like Covenant will come on with this program, because there's so much volatility in the employment scene today. And if you can make an impact with a young person while they're in high school, that's going to pay dividends in the future. So kudos to everybody at KUB involved. I know being a mentor is not an easy thing. I've done it before, and you feel like, gosh, that's going to take a lot of time. But then when you see the person that you've mentored putting those skills that you spent time with them to try to reinforce, it's very rewarding. So I know the mentors have gotten a lot of it out of this as well.
It's a reciprocal relationship. Absolutely. Well, thank you all. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Great work.
Now I'd like to recognize Commissioner Feinbaum for the nominating committee report.
Thank you, Chair Simpson Brown.
The nominating committee met today to begin this year's process for nominating candidates for the commissioner term that begins January 1st, 2024. This will be for a new commissioner to replace Commissioner Small, whose term will be expiring, and you will be missed, sir. The application is available on KUB's website at www.kub.org or by calling KUB. Applications should be submitted by 12 p.m. on Thursday, September 14th, 2023. Knoxville City Charter requires that 5 or more candidates be nominated at the October meeting for a transmittal to the mayor for final selection and confirmation by the City Council. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any members of the public who wish to address the board today? Well, following the adjournment of this meeting, the board will have a lunch session that is open for the public to observe. This meeting is adjourned.